So what's going on in DC now is right up my alley. I love it.
Nicholas St. John. I run the Washoe Patriots, and I'm the director of Alt One Private Health Association, and now the co-chair of the Washoe Freedom Coalition. So we're organizing things so we get a coalition, so we make sure that all the organizations are working together, and that we're not duplicating efforts, and that we have a lot of synergy. So looking forward to that, and I will be in the hot seat next month.
Hi, I'm Chris, alcoholic addict. I've lived in Reno for about 4 years. Conservative for 40 years, maybe, something like that. Anyway, glad to be here.
The gentleman that just came in, let him use the mic.
My name is Willie West, and I just here to. My name is Willie West, and I'm here just to support Dr. Gedney.
I'll introduce Dr. Gadney when we start. I want to thank everybody for coming. It's a lighter crowd. We normally have from 25 to 50 in person. However, we do get 30 to 40, which Ron is taking Bill's place today. Bill Conrad is my co-founder, and we're doing live streaming. We get 40 to 45 watching the meeting at home, and we get almost 400 within a day looking at the video. So it's a pretty good sized audience. At one time, we had up to 5,000 or more. With that in mind, just a couple of announcements. Tonight, for any of you, Redmove took over First Friday, starting last month, which Tom Tabor and I started that 15 years ago. And anyway, tonight it's at Mimi's at 6 o'clock. It's just a fun time. You network, you social, and you even have to talk to Kate. And if you have announcements or things you want to say, at 7 o'clock, I always let people do their announcements, like anything at 7 o'clock. And the rest of the time is you buy your own food and your own drinks. It's kind of a nice time. The next thing is our next Redmove lunch, which we're going to be going to first Thursday starting in August. So the lunches or dinner, which we will do dinners for debates, are going to start in August. We'll start in August, first Thursday, and that'll be lunch or dinner. First Friday, the next day. Okay? But it really got messed up this time because, or in July, because of the 4th of July. So in July, we're doing the Redmove lunch on the 11th. And one of the speaker will be Nicholas on there. And then that same night at Bully's in Sparks will be the First Friday. Does that make sense? On the second. Then we'll be going to the first. Well, it's because of 4th of July. You can't compete with that. You won't have anybody there. So, a couple of you just got here. Tom? Yeah. Introduce yourself. No, get up to the mic. Get up to the mic. Turn it on for him.
Tom Pink,
and then Debbie, introduce yourself. Where are you from?
Everybody knows I'm from right next door to Ray. They all know because they know where Ray lives. That's where I live too. But anyway, hello.
I'm Debbie Hudgens, there. Debbie Hudgens, the president of the Republican Women of Reno.
Thank you. Well, we got a few more people. Everybody get their sandwiches and cookies and all that good stuff. And right at noon, we'll introduce Dr. Gadney, and I'll be doing like a podcast format. Huh? We're live already, which is okay. You want to start early? Oh, right on the button. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce Dr. Karen Gadney. She's retired now, way too young to retire, but she was 30 years as a medical doctor at the prisons. And with that in mind, I will ask her some questions. And at the end, after 15, 20 minutes, we'll open it up for the audience to ask her. Now understand, this is being all filmed, and it will go live, and it will go on the video. So, me? With that in mind, would you welcome Dr. Karen Gadney? First question. Karen, tell us a little about yourself and what you're doing since you're retired.
Thank you, Jay. First of all, I think you should know that I never grew up deciding to be a prison doctor. It never occurred to me. I actually was a poor kid who got everything on scholarships. One of them was the National Health Service Corps, which means that the federal government paid for my medical school. And in return, I had to work 4 years where no doctor would work, in essence. And when I finished my internal medicine residency at UNR, I was the chief resident of the VA and Washoe back in the day. They said, "Oh, we found a spot for you." And they said, "You're going to prison." It was quite a shock for me. And I think that that was the most incredible experience anyone could have in their life. Because one, I had no preconceptions of prisons at all. I had always been too poor, so I never had TV, so I didn't see nonsense. I had to work and study like incredible amounts, so I never listened to politics at all. And everything for me was science and medicine. And when I was put in the prison, let's just say in 1987, I want you to envision a tall, blonde 30-year-old going into the prison. And I was married to Clifton Coley Macklin, a military combat guy, master's in finance, grew up in Hyde Park, and happened to be Black. And when I entered the prison system did not know what to make of me because I was oriented to medicine, not punishment, custody. I felt I was there as a doctor. What you may not know is in the United States in 1976, the Supreme Court in Estelle versus Gamble made an amendment to the Constitution, and this is 1976, that individuals who were incarcerated had to have access to medical care for serious medical need. I did not realize that half the prisons in our country in 1976 did not really have medical care.
Really?
Yes, and it was up to the wardens to decide whether someone got care or not. And it was the federal government that put me in Nevada prison because they were under huge lawsuits. At the time I ended up there, they had lawsuits, for example, mentally ill individuals who are paranoid and schizophrenic. They were just shooting them with buckshot and tying them down till they tired out. And then when they woke up and they acted up again, they did the same thing. And this was a number of lawsuits. And what I didn't realize is that before that time, the doctors that were actually occasionally there, the Nevada Board of Medical Examiners had stripped their licenses, but they allowed a doctor to work at a prison with no license. Okay. Oh, yes. Right. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. And the biggest news that formed just the way I looked at things, 1.5 years into my working, on Friday the 13th, 1989, I was taken hostage. And I was assaulted, I was raped, a concussion grenade, SWAT teams got me out, killed the inmate a few feet from me. And sometimes bad things happen, but what really affected me was that I went back to work on Monday and the prison said nothing to me. But the inmate population sent me well cards, and whenever they saw me, they wanted to make sure that they in no way supported this guy. And the guy was Kenneth Meller, Marine, Vietnam, killed a cop, and had spent years in the prison. And it was very much more this mindset of suicide by cop. He didn't want to live. And he had been on death row at one time. But in 1972, the Supreme Court disbanded death row, and then he was off of it, and then later states decided to start death row again. And the greatest thing I ever did was forgive him and also forgive custody for allowing it to happen, because they wanted to get rid of me because I was actually taking care of the inmates. And that was not something that was very well done in the 1980s. Most of the custody officers would just tell me, if their lips are moving, they're lying. And of course, in the medical world, that is not the philosophy of looking at every patient and thinking, they're just lying. You have to truly listen to them, examine them, and decide what's best for them. And that's what I did for years. And these 4 gentlemen here, actually 3, 4, well, in my system, I had no idea they were coming. But I will say that I'm one of probably the few people in the prison where in the outside world, I never worry about my guys who are in prison. And it's interesting to go into a Walmart where I shop, and guys will come up to me, hey doc, can you look at this rash on my arm? And I have seen probably over 100,000 inmates in my career, if not more. But that gives you a bit of an idea of what I think. And
What about your personal background? Where'd you grow up? And
I grew up in upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains with parents. My mother was immigrant, refugee from the Second World War, spent time in prison war camps. And my father was merchant marine and signed up when he was a teenager when Pearl Harbor hit in the US. So neither one of my parents ever had a high school education. And so when I decided to become a doctor at about the age of 9, they patted me on the head and said, "That's nice, but at 18, you're on your own." And so since 18, I've been on my own.
I know you have some very specific views about the need for, even though the legislature just ended, you have some very specific views about improvements to the medical system for the prisons or prison reform.
Yes, and you have to look at prison reform. Everyone has different opinions, but since I come out of the medical and the science world, I'm oriented to what I look at in terms of a disease. The first thing, the most important thing is prevention. And that means preventing individuals from entering prison because, one, their mental illness wasn't taken care of. They were children and basically destroyed through either their parents or the foster system or racism, and took a lot of hits. The school system tends to bounce kids out if they're acting up a little bit. And the juvenile detention systems do not, let's say, improve these children. And so I'm very big into preventing people from ending up in the prison world. And then on the inside, I look at it like medicine. If someone has a problem, then you do your best to make them whole again. And there are many people you can't, but that's medicine as well. You can't make them whole, but you can make them better. And on the inside, there are different ways to do that. If you look at the individual and treat them as someone who you actually believe can be different than their particular crime, and then you realize and watch people over time, some do dramatically change and some don't. But this is the same in medicine. You know, you have a obese, smoking, alcoholic person, and they keep bouncing in with their heart problems. And as a doctor, you can judge them, or you can try to help them overcome those problems and be healthy again. And that's how I'm oriented in the prison. One of the things that I did in the prison was I created life skill courses, and I taught that as a volunteer in the evening. They were originally called BETA, Bureau of Alcohol and Drug Abuse, because we actually had an inmate, Mr. Hearn, who was a Vietnam vet who ended up getting a grant through the Bureau of Alcohol and Drug Abuse to help with substance abuse, because the prison, when I entered, they had nothing, they didn't know what they were doing in terms of trying to help people with substance abuse. So here an inmate wrote the grant, then we got the grant, and then when the grant ran out, I just continued it on my own as a volunteer in terms of life skill and in affecting drug use.
Probably a lot of us don't know. What prison did, I know Carson had a prison, then they built a new one. But what are the prisons here in Nevada and the new one and everything?
Well, I worked at Northern Nevada Correctional Center, which is in Carson City. And that is known as a medium security prison. But a few years after I was there, they built the only regional medical facility in the state. It's a 60-bed medical and 60-bed psych unit. And we had 5 dialysis machines in that facility. I did all the chemotherapy for the state. And we could do a lot of things in the regional medical facility, but when you look at CAT scans and MRIs and surgeries and ICU, those particular individuals were sent to the hospital. Now, we also had Nevada State Prison, and that's on 5th Street. It was actually established in 1862, before Nevada was even a state, territorial prison. And bizarrely, I got pulled into, when I retired, I am now a prison tour guide at the old prison. And I am a prison tour guide, okay, at the old prison, to talk about the history of the place, but also I helped out on a movie at the old prison called Mustang. And that was, the executive producer was Robert Redford. Now, they have prison tours in the summer. And if you have some incredible desire to go on the tour, they're 90 minutes and you learn a lot of the history. And I do that about once every 2 weeks. I do a tour for them. Then you also have Warm Springs Prison, which is really right next to the old prison. That was established in 1964, and then later they used it for the women. When I started my career, we had only about 200 women inmates in the entire state. That was it. Now we have 1,300, and they are at Florence McClure Prison in Las Vegas. We have, God, how many institutions? We have Ely Prison, which is considered max prison, but their sick people are sent to us. We have High Desert Prison in Las Vegas, that is sometimes known as the Gladiator School for the prison world. We have Southern Desert Correctional Center. We've got 8 conservation camps. These are the NDF guys, Nevada Department of Forestry guys. I have to do a shout out for one of the new assembly members, and I'm blanking on his name now, but he actually had been a prior felon, is now an assemblyman, and he pushed through a bill where if you're an inmate and you are an NDF fighter, you know, fighting the fires and learning all about the fire things, when they would leave, the fire people didn't hire them. And so they pushed the bill to allow them to be hired in the NDF world, because you need firefighters. In fact, a lot of people don't realize how many of the inmate population are our firefighters. And when I started, they were paying the inmates $1 a day, and they charge room and board, by the way, the prison, right? They charge room and board for the prison. And unfortunately, in the early 90s, they also made the decision to charge inmates for medical care, a copay. Now that has been done away with just recently because the legislature realized that there was a lot of kickback over that, because you can't constitutionally say you need medical care and then you have to pay for it, and you can't. Plus, when they leave, they have a medical debt. And so the different bills that have gone through the legislature are limiting medical debt.
Before we go on, there are a couple people who came in a little late. Tom and Jane Tabor just finished their program on conversations from the Capitol. Stand up so they can see you. Hi. And Karen Conrad is the treasurer for Redmove. Okay, now we'll continue. Why don't you introduce, you were surprised some of your guests, were they inmates?
Actually, I distinctly remember Mr. Bonner because of your medical problems. And Teddy Craig, I know, has been helping, our population. And I recognize, but do not remember the names of the gentleman who came in after that.
Oh, the one at the end next to
That's
Ted-
Teddy. Yeah. Yeah, Willie.
Teddy, you got to use the mic.
I got one of them super big mouths. I'm Teddy Craig, and it's Willie West, John Bonner, known as Paris. And then we got Richard. Richard just recently got out, and we all came to support because we all know her
Do
personally.
any of you want to speak just a little bit about the medical?
And Teddy, I'd like to know who told you that? Who ratted me out? That's what I want to know.
I was here for the last meeting, and I seen you in legislative.
Ah, okay.
Tom, come up to the mic.
Well, I'm John Bonner, and Dr. Gedney and I were, I guess, more than doctor and inmate. We were established a term of, I know you, you know me, then we're going to take care of your medical problems, and from here we're going to get you out of here and not have you return. And that's what happened. I'd returned twice, but it was only on a violation, and I got out and did some volunteer work for a little bit, and I had to stop that because of my medical. But other than that, she's such a great person. I was talking about her just the other day before I even knew about this meeting. I read her book and was hoping to see her again. Because there's so much that I do want to ask. And yes, what is this rash?
I know. Yeah, that is true.
So, but yeah, there is so much about her that is amazing. Just amazing. Just an amazing person that you'll never forget.
Thank you, John.
All right, how much did you pay these?
I didn't pay them, but I paid for their lunch because they were hungry.
All right.
Can I say something brief?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, but the other gentleman.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that Doc Gedney was my doctor, and I met her one day. A friend of mine was in the infirmary, and he was in bad shape, and they expected him to pass away. And I asked for permission if I could go up and see him, and the officers, the COs there, they said no. And somehow I got around to asking the doc if it was possible for me to go see Tony Kikuchi.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she arranged it, and it was awesome. And she helped him, and he got out, and he surpassed his life expectancy because of Doc Gedney. And that was pretty awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to have you, what suggestions do you say for prison improvement, even though the legislature is over?
Yeah.
Give some specifics.
All right. I'm going to give some specifics because I look at the bills that either pass or don't pass, right? And as an example, AB 91. AB 91 is the bill that the Assembly passed, but the Senate didn't. And in essence, what it says is if you have individuals in prison who were under the age of 25 with their crime and are in prison for decades, should we take a second look and decide whether they should spend the rest of their lives in prison, basically. And unfortunately, that was shut down. But I will say that I have seen guys who, came in at 18 or 19, 20, and if you have children or young teenagers who are sort of do some stupid things or violent things, and then for me, you have to remember, I was there 30 years. So I see an 18-year-old, and when I leave, they're 50, right, 48, and they're still there, and they are in no way the same men they were at 18. And the Second Look Act just means you take a second look. If you look at the prison population, because actually I went to their quarterly stats for the Nevada Department of Corrections, and I found that 16% of the prison population are lifers. That means they'll never leave. Life. That's a lot of people. And there's a bunch of those people where it really makes no sense to keep them there forever, because they're not the same people. That's AB 91, but that was shot down. The other one, interestingly, was Governor Lombardo's bill. That was the Senate Bill 457. And that he labeled as Safe Streets and Neighborhood Acts. But in essence, I've watched the prison for 30 years, and I want to make the point that in 2019, the Prison Board of Commissions was tasked with really looking at certain rules and regulations and laws, because they were so worried that the prison population was going to keep going up, 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 and that they would have to build another prison, which is ungodly expensive for the state to build another prison. And this was where they ended up, and I still remember, I was sitting at the Prison Board of Commissions, and Aaron Ford basically told Governor Sisolak, he said, do you know that 53% of the individuals we are now putting in prison have not done a crime? And Sisolak was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And this is what he was talking about, is something called technical parole violations. So people go out on a parole, they have certain stipulations, certain things they have to do or not do. And if they don't do it, then they get yanked and they get thrown back in prison. And I had a hard time believing that in terms of some of the rules. For example, I would see a guy come back and I'd be like, why are you back? And he said, hey, Doc, I was on this construction crew. I didn't know that when we went up to Tahoe, I was on the California side, and I didn't tell my parole officer I was out of state because I didn't know we were going there. And that parole officer violated the guy, and he goes back to prison. And I thought, this is the most stupid thing I have ever heard in my life. And then I found out it's actually true. You could have these technical parole violations, and they will bounce you back into prison. So Aaron Ford and the big prison board commission started looking at things of, let's just say, a bit more common sense, because sometimes parole officers would be like, you didn't show up this month and pay us money, so we're going to bounce you back to prison. And the guy could be in the hospital. Doesn't matter. Boom, he's back in prison. And so Aaron Ford really pushed that. And then also the whole board created certain things where For example, if you have a certain amount of drug on you, depending on the amount, you can be then considered a distributor. But let's say the amount of drug is like 3/4, like 3/4 together, that weight, and that could then already put them as a distributor versus a user. And so they changed the amount. They also changed amounts on theft, like what's a misdemeanor versus what's a felony. Misdemeanor, jail; felony, prison. And when they changed some of those laws, one, the prison population went down. At our height, we were 13,000. Now we're, from 2019, because of that, we are now at 10,800. We didn't go up. And actually, I also looked at all the crime stats. The crime stats in everything went down. All the violence went down. The only thing that's sort of an uptick is stealing cars. I don't really understand that, but that's one of the upticks. But all the rest of the different crimes have gone down, not up. And Lombardo, if you really look at the bill, it sort of ups those potentials of putting more people back into prison by changing the theft level, this level, that level, and I'm not political. I stay away from politics. I just like science and common sense and statistics. That's what I've always looked at, is numbers. No, SB 457 didn't. Then something weird happened, because the assembly at the stroke of midnight didn't get the amendment, and it stopped.
Can't
Right.
hear you, Kate.
Yeah, but it did not pass. No, did not pass. And from what I read in the assembly bill, they were looking at amendments, and then, at least it was in the Nevada Independent newspaper where I saw that, because I guess they have that time requirement at like the stroke of midnight. If it isn't done, it's like axed, right? So it didn't go. It did not go. And, for me, I really didn't know what that Senate bill was until I read all of it. And then, because of, let's just say, the history I know from 2019, where we were, and I realized that the governor was upping, let's just say he was upping the chances of more people ending up in prison. And it's just the way the laws were placed. Okay. And the dilemma of putting more people in prisons, if you look at, for example, the female population, the majority of these women have children, right? And this also takes effect when you have the mother tossed into prison for X amount of years, and then the kids end up who knows where, right? And these are all these ripple effects that go on. And interestingly, they passed some laws specifically for the women. Imagine you're a female in the prison, and all women in here know what happens about once a month, right? And the prison didn't really, let's say, give hygiene products. You had to pay for them, right? So they would give them, if you don't know what I'm talking about, menstruation, they give them the teeny little pads, like you would get maybe 3 or 4 a month, and then you're out of luck, and you'd have to pay for it. There are a lot of hygiene products that had a lot of markup and things like that. And in the prison world, inmates have different jobs, get a little bit of money. The prison takes room and board. For years, the medical copay was $8. That could be almost the whole salary for their month for one visit. They had, if you have family members, family could donate money into an inmate's account. And then the prison system had something called a discretionary administrative fee. Aha. Oh. Okay. And so they take a chunk off the top. And one of the directors who ultimately was fired, Charles Daniels, at his height, he was taking 60% off the top. 60%. Yeah, off the top. Now, what happened is, think about it this way. You're a poor family, your loved one's in prison, and the food in the prison has gotten worse and worse over the years. I watched that, but it's even worse than it's ever been because Amakar or whatever that, food prison world is, has made the food really bad because it's the cheapest right around. And so a family puts $100 on the books for the guy so he can eat something. And then the prison's taken a huge amount off the top. So the families actually went to the legislators, and there's an organization out there called Return Strong. It is the families of the incarcerated, and what they do is they sort of let the legislators know, hey, you're doing a tax on poor people, us. We didn't do a crime. But you'd have to think about it. If you were poor and you have a loved one and you want them to eat something and they're taking 60% off the top as an administrative fee, it's not acceptable. And the legislators didn't know that because it was called discretionary. Now it's changed. I don't know where they are at the right moment, but that was changed. When it's discretionary, it can be dangerous inside a prison. And the products in the commissary where you could buy cookies or coffee, they up the cost of it anyway, right? So it's very, very expensive.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to have people ask questions. But if you ask a question, come up to the mic and ask your question. Identify yourself and ask a question. One at a time. Kate?
I was wondering if you've dealt with any transgender issues.
No, let me put it this way. We intermittently had individuals come in to the prison, they're males, but they definitely had felt they were females, but they never pushed for transgender anything, right? I did have a hermaphrodite. A hermaphrodite medically means they are born with male and female genitalia.
Wow.
Oh, yes, that's very unbelievably rare. So just so you know, medically, they almost always change the infant to a female because their theory is that the brain develops female first. The testicles, which drop down and then create the testosterone on the brain, are later, so they change it to a female. This individual, his father was a military man and said, no, I want my son to be a male. Poor individual ended up being sent to Vietnam and being tortured, came back, and then decided to try to steal money to have a fix, and then got caught, and then ended up in prison. And they put him in Lovelock prison ultimately, which is considered protective custody. And then he committed suicide. So that was the only person remotely like that. I had men who definitely felt they were female, they're gay. I mean, they felt they were gay. And some would come in where they'd been partially changed. I'll never forget one individual who looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but had got Dolly Parton breasts, all right? That was a very strange individual for me. But as a doctor, the poor individual said, these things are killing me. I need a bra, because they were actually pulling on his pec muscles, right? And so I ordered medically a sports bra for him. All right. Now imagine I'm walking from my regional medical center. It's a long distance to walk to go out. And the captain of security is yelling at me at the top of his lungs while, there are other inmates. He goes, Dr. Gedney, how in the world you can't? I'm going to talk to you about a bra. And I'm thinking, I don't have one. I mean, I'm too, and I'm like, what, he's right. So, but he would not allow this individual to have a support bra. So he was dragging on the pec muscles. I mean, to me, medically, it's like a no-brainer. But the captain of security did, I don't know why he found it so offensive, but he did.
Next question.
First of all,
Speak louder.
First of all, I really want to thank you for what you did, and thank you for being here today. But my question is, what kind of programs or what kind of things do they do to try to help inmates improve their life? I'm thinking education or that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, I can give you a couple of examples. One of the ones that stands out for me, because I saw the violence decrease at Nevada State Prison, and I mean really decrease at Nevada State Prison, was in 2005, we had a female prison director, Jackie Crawford, probably the only progressive, true prison director I saw. All the rest were men. But Jackie did a couple of things. One, she started the Puppies on Parole program, right? This is where you have the SPCA. They've got a bunch of pit bull dogs who are been abused or taught to fight and are unadoptable. And what the SPCA and Jackie did is they had heard in a couple of different states how incredible a dog program could affect the inmate population, reduce violence. So Nevada State Prison, they ended up bringing the dogs in, and somehow the outside people are very attached to animals versus people. So they're willing to donate their time to train the inmates like real dog trainers, right? And the dogs were with the inmate in the cell in the Nevada block, where they were 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the inmate trained them, loved them, walked them, taught them, and they became incredibly, well-trained, loving animals, because love was given to the animal. And then they had adoption. In fact, a lot of people adopted these dogs. Now, what I saw was a unique thing that I don't think I've ever seen before. Nevada State Prison, especially in the summer, that's when they like to fight. I would have jaw fractures, stabbings, all sorts of stuff in Nevada State Prison. When the dogs got there, and after a while, the violence went really down, because one, the guys training the dogs were lifers. That means they have sort of gravitas, they're like, hey, I'm here. This is a good program. None of you guys mess it up. And so they and then the dogs, imagine what it's like to be decades in a prison and you don't get physical contact with someone who loves you. Those dogs love those guys. And the guys would tell me, this is the first time I've ever experienced love or attention. And it really made a big difference. So that was an incredible program. Another program Jackie started was the Mustang program, right? So at Stewart Conservation Camp, you have, a lot of people love horses and Mustangs, and they don't like them being picked up and, shipped off as horse flesh meat. And so the Mustangs came in, and then again, people like animals, so horse trainers would donate their time to train the inmates who were, helping the horses and doing the furrier with the hooves and all that sort of thing. And they now have auctions where the state makes money off, these Mustangs, where they're sold for 10 grand plus because they're incredibly trained. And what I didn't know was that the Nevada Division of Forestry uses horses because certain equipment can't get up into really wild, crazy places. And also normal horses are too skittish, where Mustangs are, I guess, really tough and I guess not so afraid of fire. And in fact, it was 2 weeks ago, I saw a great newspaper article where one of the horses trained at Stewart Camp was called Lightning, but he is now a New York police horse. Actually, the papers were making this great comment about, at Northern Nevada Correctional Center, Stewart, this Mustang is now in New York City as a police horse. And I didn't realize the New York Police Department has horses where they have to be a certain height, a certain color, a certain this, a certain that. And this horse was ideal for it. Jackie also started the first geriatric unit in the prison. One of the things people forget about is if you have very long sentences and life sentences, you end up with a lot of old people. I mean, really. And when I first started, it was, younger guys. When I left, I'm like, oh my God, it's like a nursing home. I mean, if you are at Northern Nevada Correctional Center, you'll see all the wheelchairs and the canes, and these guys cannot climb into bunks. But more than anything, when the culinary opens, all the young guys are going fast. So the old guys can't even get to the culinary in time. And then they don't have teeth and they don't swallow so well. So they don't get their food early enough. It's like a nightmare from a medical standpoint. And Jackie actually created one unit which was known as the True Grit program, where she had a female psychologist who was a geriatrician, and she and I and everybody put together this old age unit where just the older guys were there, which is the closest to the culinary, and give them some time to get there first, right? I mean, this is like common sense. And I mean, imagine it's winter time, it's like, I mean, we get snow in the wheelchairs. And they ended up having craft work. They brought in a therapy dog. They would donate yarn, so the guys were knitting and crocheting and stuff. But here's the thing that was wonderful. Number one, they stopped complaining about their medical problems because they had something else to do. And that was a godsend to me. I mean, and they started bands. She got musical equipment in. So I didn't realize how many of these guys had been singers and, whatever, guitarists and drummers in their old lives. And so we had a doo-wop band, a rock band, a Western band. And and that changed it too. So when you talk about programs, those types of things, education is a big one. I think one of the biggest one is having a trade, right? So the guys who were given trades where prison industry had woodwork, they used to have dry cleaning, I had one guy who, was taught to dry clean. He's now in Reno. He owns 3 dry cleaners, right? Because he started working in there and then, became a businessman, right? So you need trades. You cannot have someone who spent decades in prison and then throw them on a curb with nothing, right? When I first entered the prison, they go, "Oh, we give them gate money." Like, what? He goes, yeah, we give them $28 when they leave. This is back in the 80s. And I thought, well, what are they going to do with $28? They go, "That's the bus ticket to California." Right? So I'm thinking, okay,
I'm gonna
this
let
is
the next topic.
wild. Yeah.
Karen.
Thank you for coming today. You had said that in exchange for your education being paid for, you
Yeah.
had to work 4 years.
Right.
Why did you stay at the prison after 4 years?
To protect the inmates from abuse. That'd be it, totally. Because, I grew up in a family where my parents had been underdogs and survived. And I wanted to help the underdog. And when I see abuse, it bothers me. It's the abuse of power. That's what I saw. And you can imagine there's, a custody officer and there's an inmate. This is tremendous power. And the thing is that if you don't have anybody watching, then very bad things can happen. And this is not that, all custody officers are bad. It's just that when you don't have someone watching, then bad things can happen. And custody officers, think of it this way, basically you can be 18 years old, have no idea what you're doing, never had work environment, and then you apply to be a custody officer and you're thrown in with custody and they immediately tell you, "Don't believe anything they say. You got to be with us. They could hurt you." And then you become one of what's known as basically the green wall. And the other thing is, if you do have some that are inappropriate or what I would consider almost either stupid or sadistic, the group does not weed them out. Okay, and that's not good. That's not good. And in fact, I had custody officers that were put in my infirmary regarding, letting people in or out. And every once in a while, we would have someone who was not appropriate for that position. And if we said something, the higher ups really didn't care. So.
I think, Liz, you wanted to ask? This will be next to the last question. It's 11:52.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for your service. It's a remarkable service for 30 years. The question is,
Yeah.
were you replaced when you retired?
When I left, yes, they had to hire another doctor. And the thing is that, the doctors in the prison, I'm a little bit of an outlier that I lasted 30 years. So the dilemma is, doctors come in and then many times within a couple of years, they just are like, and then they leave.
Okay.
Right.
Regarding AB 91, I hope
Yeah.
someone would push it through the next session, because I think right now President Trump has a program in the White House led by this woman who he pardoned after many years as a first-time offender, and she is now leading the committee looking through all the possibilities of pardon, and she's successful because he has pardoned several in the last few months. And I hope AB 91, it's a good program if someone in the Senate or will push
Yeah.
it through next session.
Right,
That's it.
yeah, and a second look always makes sense,
Yeah.
right. And it's not that if you have someone who you really consider a threat, then you don't have to let them go. It's just a second look. And I've seen, I've seen guys who have done extremely well in the outside world, but I know you wanted to, Wes, you wanted to ask a question. I'm curious. Go close though, so I can hear.
Yeah. I just want to say, when I was in prison, it was like in 2009 2009, I had a kidney operation. I had a spot like that on my kidney. And I went to the Nevada, where all the inmates go to have the operation, and I couldn't breathe. And
You mean in the hospital, Carson
in the
Hospital?
Yeah. I was in the hospital and I couldn't breathe, but the guards came back to take me back to prison.
Mhm.
And the nurses there said, well, he needs oxygen. He has to have oxygen because he can't breathe. And they took me back anyway, no oxygen. When I got back to prison, I was so mad, I wanted to act out and do something to the guards that brought me back. I was so mad, I was crying. I was just furious. And I got back to the infirmary because I was put back in the infirmary where you was working in NCC, and you gave me some oxygen, and I told you what happened to me. And that's what I want to thank you for, because thanks.
Well, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And I gotta go because I got a doctor's appointment.
Oh, there you go.
We're gonna wrap it up. I always try to keep it by 1. You can stay after, ask her questions. But what I'd like to do is, since the camera points this way, I'd appreciate if all of you'd come up here, and that way Bill and on the video can see all of you. If you would just come up here and behind Dr. Gadney, please.
Oh, and by the way, I thought I have a handout of all the stats that you might be interested in and the bills you might be interested in. And I also have the different organizations that I'm involved in and why.
I just wanted to thank her in public because 5 of us had cancer. We all had prostate cancer. We all had the same level. We had everything. And she treated me until I went to the doctor. The other 4, unfortunately, has passed. But I'm here because I followed her instructions. And I just want to say thank you because she saved my life as well.
If you want a handout, they're here. And I do have some of my books there. And if you wanted to buy it on Amazon or Audible, I have.
And everyone for being I'll be this guest at the next one. If anyone's interested in election integrity and the campaign statistics, I'm going to be talking about working with candidates and making sure we get them with an advantage. And we'll be talking about some of the issues what we found with the election integrity in the last vote.